Hello guys, welcome back to another video. I don't normally make these types of videos, but I think it's important to do so. Basically, if you don't know what CuffBust is, it's a game made in Unreal Engine 5 by the developer TwoStarGames, or Gavin, who is the guy who made the hit game Choo Choo Charles. Chances are you've probably come across or watched some of his YouTube videos where he's made many different devlogs covering the development progress of his games. I mean, he solo developed Choo Choo Charles, which was a big hit success, which likely cleared over millions in sales, and after releasing his first successful game, he was ready to move on to his next biggest project, which was CuffBust. CuffBust is essentially a multiplayer prison break game. The general idea of the game is that you play as prisoners. You have to avoid the guards and try to escape the prison. It's a pretty solid idea, and TwoStar, he took this idea and ran with it. Essentially, he designed these little cute characters with his unique art style and quickly made some devlogs covering the development on his channel. Now, I was pretty interested and wrapped up in this development since it was made in Unreal Engine 5, and since we're already talking about Unreal Engine game development, there is something I want to quickly mention. If you guys are new here to the channel, my name is Smart Polly and I make all sorts of Unreal Engine news and content, and if you are interested in learning Unreal Engine 4 game development, I have some exciting news for you. My Unreal Engine 5 multiplayer survival game course bundle now has a 25% off limited time sale. To commemorate the launch of Unreal Engine 5.7, we're having a special 25% off discount, so use code UNREAL57 at checkout when you purchase the survival game course bundle. Get access to over 100 hours of learning content between both courses included in the single bundle, and kickstart your game development journey today. So check it out, link in the description below, or head over to my website smartpoly.teachable.com to learn more. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Anyways, fast forward to the launch. When CuffBust actually came out and launched, the base game cost $20 and it only featured one map. On top of that, they were charging an additional $10 in day one DLC, and he was also selling a $30 plushie. So, that wasn't the main issue. You see, CuffBust was built with a very unique idea. I mean, they only had one map and you could only play as the prisoners. So it's a multiplayer game, so you can play with your friends, but essentially all of the guards that you were supposed to fight against were just AI or NPCs with some very simple logic. So you could very easily memorize and avoid these guards, and because the game only had one map, you could also memorize things like the escape routes. So, you can combine these two elements, the fact that the AI behavior is super simple and basic, and of course the fact that there's only one map. The experience essentially boiled down to about 10 minutes of gameplay, and after that it became very repetitive and predictable because you had the entire prison layout and guard logic figured out. And on top of that, of course, you had the $20 price tag, which a lot of people were pretty angry about since the gameplay lasted only about 10 minutes maximum. And so TwoStarGames saw some of these complaints about the one map and also the price tag, and so what he did was he lowered the price from $20 down to $10, and he completely cut the price in half. I mean, this wasn't just a price discount, this was just a complete price change. Within 24 hours of the launch, he cut the price in half. To all the people who purchased the game, he basically told them that they could just go and ask Steam for a refund. Now, obviously, this made the original customers, the people who bought the game at full price, the $20, they were pissed because obviously it made them felt like they were scammed. And a lot of these people actually played the game. Some of them played the game longer than 2 hours, which is around the cutoff time for Steam refunds. And so when people were trying to ask for a refund from Steam, they were getting declined because they played the game more than 2 hours. And so, these people who were mad about the price change, they took to the reviews and left tons of negative reviews. And so the game actually for a time dipped into the overwhelmingly negative reviews for a bit. Now the game is sitting around mixed reviews, but, obviously the damage is done. And honestly, I hope that TwoStarGames can actually turn this around. And, he has the chance to do that. I mean, ultimately, I think the main issues with the game boils down to, number one, the price. It was just too high. I mean, if you compare this game to other games in the similar indie genre, $20 is just too high. He should have priced it maybe around $10, maybe $15 if it had more maps and more content. And then obviously number two, the other issue was the fact that the gameplay loop was just way too easy. I mean, he had this absolutely golden idea. You have this prison break game where you play with your friends, you escape the jail cell, and he messed that idea up when he decided to use AI or NPCs for the guards. He should have just made them playable characters. Then it would be, player versus player. You'd have one group play as guards and the other group of people play as prisoners, sort of like a team deathmatch. I mean, you can look at games like Roblox. I mean, I remember even playing playing a Prison Break game in Roblox, and it was the same sort of Prison Break idea, but in this case, they actually allowed you to pick what team you wanted to be on. So you could play as the guards or you can play as the prisoners. So basically, if you wanted to play as like a guard, you'd be chasing down the prisoners, actually handcuffing them and putting them back in their cells. You'd have access to things like the guard armory, so you'd have all the SWAT gear items, flash grenades, SWAT shields, the batons, etc. So you could totally use it to like beat up the prisoners if you wanted to, or just lock them in solitary confinement. And if you have all these options, this game had so many different features, right? And this is just a Roblox game that you can go and play. And even if you play as like things like the prisoners, you could go and gang up on the guards. So you could have like 6 guys as prisoners, jump one guard and take the key and escape. And then after you escape the prison, you basically go to like this bad guy's hideout. So they had like this part of the level where you had pretty much everything equipped. You have all these different cars, helicopters, all sorts of weapons, guns, armory that you could then stock up on and then go all the way back to the prison to, wreak havoc and, free your friends. So there was just so many golden ideas here that he could have easily made and gave the players the ability to play as the guards, which would just add for infinite replayability and maximum fun. And I think that would immediately solve some of the gameplay problems. The fact that the game feels boring because ultimately you're just playing against bots and AI, and instead of that, you can play against your friends or just other people online. I mean, hell, even me, I suck at programming good AI in my game. So instead, I just, make the game multiplayer, make the players, play amongst themselves, give them the creative tools, the weapons, all that stuff to do so. And boom, there's your gameplay. You don't need to spend hours creating complex AI. Just make it player versus player. Now, the other issue with the game, in my opinion, was the fact that, again, they only had one map. Like, he did include a map editor, so I'll give him points for that. But, that allows the community to make things like custom maps, more maps, etc. But again, people, got angry about this because if you release a game with one map and a map editor, it just seems like you're expecting or, relying on the community to make up for the lack of content that the game included on launch. So I think, again, this problem could have been easily solved by, instead of spending all the time developing and making a map editor, you cut that out, cut all the development time it takes to create that, and instead put that time into either creating a procedural level generator, like maybe, a procedural level generator that makes infinite unique prisons to break out of. That way you have, infinite amount of prisons to play with your friends. And of course, if you don't even want to do that, you could have just even added things like 5 to 8 different maps, so just a variety of different maps to play through. But honestly, I don't even think that was a super big issue. Like, maybe just a couple more maps would have been fine. I think the main issue mainly has to do with the fact that it was $20 and just the gameplay was too simple. You were playing against, bots, basically. I mean, you can look at games like Among Us. Among Us only had one main map that people played, and people played the hell out of it. But also Among Us was only $5. So ultimately, I think it just boils down to the fact that, the price versus the gameplay. If your game has a fun gameplay loop that offers hours of gameplay and replayability, in the case of having, the guards also be playable characters, you can combine this with a good price tag, maybe $10 or less, then you definitely have a solid game idea. You could throw in a couple of extra maps and you're good. And honestly, I think CuffBust can be turned around. He can go and update it. They might not be able to make things like the guards playable characters. I mean, this late in development, that would basically imply or mean that he'd have to reprogram the entire mechanics of the game. But at least he could do things like adding more maps, more difficulty, etc. Now, his audience and fans are leaving all sorts of comments under his videos, which is kind of just sad to see because, I mean, the guy did spend many years developing this game. He even hired people to do some of the artwork. But a big problem with game development or just solo game development, indie development in general, is just burnout. I mean, not a lot of people talk about this or mention it, but actually Gavin did kind of hint at this in one of the interviews over in this video, so I'll go ahead and play the clip for context.
When I decided that I actually wanted to not starve and that I wanted to make a living, that's when I kind of decided that I kind of just needed to. Because at the time, I really loved making games. And I was like, okay, I love making games. Yep. I want to make games as much as possible. I want to spend all my time doing this. So that means I need to make money from it to be able to do it more. And so then I got hyper focused on figuring out how to make money off of it. And then I became a business person. And now I don't like making games. So...
Is that the case? Do you not enjoy the process as much as you used to anymore?
Oh, definitely not as much as I used to. There are some days that are enjoyable, but for the most part, it's I think I could possibly enjoy doing like artistic stuff again, but I haven't for a while.
So as you can see in this clip, after the hit success of his game Choo Choo Charles, basically he wanted to keep making games as much as he could, which obviously meant that he needed to make a profit. And so he turned into the mindset of like, you know, how can I get money to run my business? So he kind of turned into this, you know, business mindset where he's like, how can I make the most amount of money so I can continue doing the things I love, like making games, but at the same time I need to make a lot of money so I can do this for as long as possible. And so he got into that mindset. And, you know, at that point, you're doing something that you love. It turns kind of into a business, which kind of turns into a job where you need to make a certain amount of money to survive. So it can turn into a very stressful environment. It can either be a hit or a miss. You can have one very popular game pop off, and then your next game that you spent years making hardly makes any sales. So you're depending on like each of one of these games being successful in order to basically pay your bills and put food on the table. So yeah, when it gets to that point, it can be extremely stressful. And also if you hire people, it can even be more stressful because then you'd have to pay things like their wages, or, you know, if you're contracting people, you'd have to pay all that stuff as well. And also if you're working on a single project for many years, you could easily get burnt out. Like if you're just grinding on this same project every single day, which could have easily been the case for him as well. He could have just overworked himself to the point where he was sick and tired of this game and he was just ready to release it so he could be done with it. And honestly, I can relate to that, me myself, because I've been working on my own games or projects for many different years to the point of just being absolutely sick of it. But yeah, anyways, I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on this game and on CuffBust's launch. What do you guys think about the launch of the game? What are some of the issues you thought, and how do you think he can resolve some of these things? He can honestly turn the game around and make it very successful, but it will take, you know, a lot of work for him to do so. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments down below. That's pretty much all my thoughts on it, and that's pretty much it for this video. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.